It was a cold evening in Chicago. The kind of evening when the sky turns gray and the wind carries a story from somewhere far away. Emily Parker walked through the crowded streets, her scarf wrapped tight around her neck. She was a young journalist, curious, brave, and always looking for stories that others ignored. That day, she wasn't working. She just wanted a break. She wandered into a small flea market near the old train station, a place full of forgotten things. Old books, dusty records, faded photos, and watches that no longer ticked. Her eyes stopped on one small item lying on a wooden table, an old silver pocket watch. Its glass was cracked, its hands frozen at 11:47 p.m. Something about it felt strange, almost alive. She picked it up carefully. "How much for this?" she asked the old man behind the table. The seller looked at her, then at the watch. His voice turned quiet. "That one's different. It belonged to a man who disappeared 30 years ago. Never found again." Emily frowned. "Disappeared?" The old man nodded. "His name was Daniel Hayes. He was a teacher here in Chicago. They say he went missing on a rainy night, right after he proposed to his girlfriend." Emily's curiosity woke up instantly. "What happened to her?" "No one knows," the man said. "Some say she moved away. Others say she lost her mind after he vanished." He leaned closer and whispered, "People say the watch stopped the moment Daniel died." Emily smiled politely, pretending not to believe him, but her heart beat faster. She paid for the watch and slipped it into her coat pocket. That night, rain poured over the city, tapping against Emily's apartment windows. She sat by her desk, turning the watch in her hand. The time was still frozen, 11:47 p.m. As she turned it over, she noticed something tiny engraved on the back. It said, "To Anna, forever yours D." The words made her shiver. She opened her laptop and started searching old newspaper archives. After a few minutes, her eyes widened. There it was. Headline: Young man vanishes at Willow Lake 1994. Name: Daniel Hayes. Last seen, leaving his house at 11:30 p.m. Location: Willow Creek, Illinois. Emily's mouth went dry. The time on the watch, 11:47 p.m., was when he vanished. She kept reading. Daniel had been engaged to a woman named Anna Reed. Police searched for weeks, but there were no clues, no body, no answers. The only thing found near the lake was a small silver chain, believed to belong to Anna. Emily leaned back in her chair. She wasn't sure why the story hit her so deeply. Maybe it was the way the watch felt warm in her hand, or how the rain outside matched the storm she felt inside. Her phone buzzed. It was her best friend, Liam, texting. "You okay? Don't get lost in another mystery again." Grinning face with sweat. Emily smiled. "Too late," she whispered to herself. Hours passed, but sleep didn't come. The ticking sound of her wall clock filled the silence. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel and Anna, a couple from the past caught in time. Finally, she stood up and looked out the window. The rain had stopped. The city lights reflected in the puddles below. She held the watch again. "What really happened to you, Daniel?" she whispered. For a moment, she thought she heard something, a soft click. She looked down. The watch's second hand had moved, just a little. Her heart skipped a beat. "That's impossible," she said softly. But when she blinked, the hand was frozen again at 11:47. Maybe it was her imagination. Or maybe it was something else. The next morning, Emily couldn't stop thinking about the story. At the news office, her boss was talking about daily assignments, but Emily's mind was still at Willow Lake. She opened her notepad and wrote, "The broken watch, the story of Daniel and Anna." She didn't know why, but she felt like the watch had chosen her. After work, she called the Willow Creek Town Library. "Hi, I'm a journalist from Chicago. I'm researching a case Daniel Hayes, missing since 1994. There was a long pause on the line. Then a woman's voice replied, "You might want to talk to Officer Tom Miller. He worked that case. But miss, be careful. That story still scares people here." Before Emily could ask more, the call ended. She looked again at the watch. It gleamed under her desk lamp, quiet and cold. The engraving to Anna almost looked fresh, as if someone had just written it. That evening, as she packed her bag to go home, her boss noticed the faraway look in her eyes. "What's got you thinking so hard, Parker?" She smiled faintly. "Just an old story that doesn't want to stay buried." He laughed. "You and your ghost stories." But Emily didn't laugh. Because deep inside, she knew this wasn't just another story. Something was waiting in Willow Creek. She looked at her phone, opened the map, and typed Willow Lake, directions. A 3-hour drive. She picked up the watch one last time. The hands were still frozen at 11:47 p.m. But as she put it into her bag, she thought she saw it shimmer just for a second, like time itself had taken a breath. And in that small, silent moment, the mystery began again. The road to Willow Creek was long and lonely. Trees stood tall on both sides, their branches crossing over the road like dark fingers. A light fog drifted across the fields, and Emily Parker drove with one hand on the wheel, the other gently touching the broken watch in her pocket. She couldn't stop thinking about the time, 11:47 p.m., and the story of Daniel Hayes and Anna Reed. The GPS said she would reach Willow Creek in 10 minutes. Her heart beat faster. It had been 30 years since Daniel vanished, but somehow, it felt like time had stopped in that moment, just like the watch. When she entered the town, it looked frozen in another decade. Old houses with peeling paint. Empty streets. A small grocery store with a cash-only sign. A single cafe stood at the corner, Lily's Place. Emily parked her car and stepped inside. The bell above the door rang softly. The smell of coffee and cinnamon filled the air. A few locals sat at tables, staring at her like she didn't belong. She gave a polite smile and walked to the counter. "Coffee, please." "Black," she said. The woman behind the counter, maybe in her 60s, poured her a cup. "You're not from around here," she said, her voice flat. "No, I'm from Chicago," Emily replied. "I'm a journalist. I'm researching an old case, Daniel Hayes. He went missing here in 1994. The woman froze for a second, then placed the cup in front of Emily. "I don't know anything about that," she said quickly. Emily noticed her hands shaking slightly. "You sure?" "He was a teacher. Engaged to Anna Reed." The woman sighed. "Miss, people around here, we don't talk about that story anymore." Before Emily could ask more, a deep voice came from behind. "You should leave it alone, young lady." Emily turned. A tall man with gray hair and a police badge sat in the corner, reading a newspaper. His eyes were sharp and tired. "Are you Officer Tom Miller?" Emily asked. The man looked up slowly. "Used to be. Now I just drink my coffee and forget bad memories." Emily walked to his table. "I think Daniel's story deserves an ending." Tom looked at her for a long time. "Some stories don't need endings. They just fade away." "But the truth matters," Emily said softly. He gave a sad smile. "You sound like I did, 30 years ago." He folded his newspaper and stood up. "If you really want to know, go talk to the Reeds. Their house is out by the old lake road. But don't expect a welcome." Emily thanked him and walked out, feeling dozens of eyes following her. The road to the Reed house was narrow and cracked. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and gold. When Emily reached the gate, she saw weeds growing over broken stone steps. The windows were dusty, and the front door hung half open. She called out, "Hello." Anyone here? No answer. Just the sound of birds and wind. She stepped inside carefully. The floor creaked under her feet. Dust covered everything: furniture, photos, and memories. On the wall, she noticed an old picture frame. Inside it, a young woman smiled: Anna Reed. She was beautiful, wearing a white dress, and holding the same silver watch Daniel had owned. But in the photo, it wasn't broken. Emily touched the glass. Anna, she whispered. Then, something moved behind her: a faint creak. She turned quickly, but no one was there. Only a curtain swayed slowly, though no wind came in. Her phone suddenly vibrated. It was a text from an unknown number. Leave the past where it belongs. Emily froze. She looked out the window. She thought she saw a shadow near the trees. A man, standing still. Watching. She quickly grabbed her phone and took a picture, but when she looked at it, there was nothing there. The watch in her pocket felt heavier now. She took it out and looked at it. The hands were still frozen until she felt a small click. The second hand moved. Once. Twice. Her breath caught. What? The watch began ticking again, softly, like a heartbeat returning to life. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Back to 11:47 p.m. The silence of the house grew louder. Emily backed away and ran outside, her heart racing. Back at her motel that night, she replayed everything in her mind: the cafe, Tom's warning, the text, the shadow, the photo of Anna. She placed the watch on the bedside table and stared at it. Why me? She whispered. Suddenly, the watch's lid flipped open on its own. Inside the glass, something appeared, faint, almost like fog. It looked like a reflection of water, and for a second, she thought she heard a man's voice whispering. Find her, tell her I waited. Emily gasped and dropped the watch. The ticking stopped. Silence again. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. The reflection was gone. Only her own scared face stared back at her. She turned on her laptop and opened Daniel's old case file once more. Something caught her eye: an address. It wasn't far. Reed Family Cemetery, Willow Creek. Under it, a small note from the original investigation. Anna Reed missing, presumed dead. Emily's eyes widened. Missing. She looked at the watch one last time before turning off the light. The time still read 11:47 p.m. But as she lay down, the faint sound of ticking started again, coming from somewhere across the room. Morning came quietly in Willow Creek. A thin layer of fog covered the small town, and the sound of birds echoed faintly from the woods. Emily Parker didn't sleep much. She sat near the window of her motel, watching the fog lift from the lake in the distance. On the small table beside her, the silver watch rested still, frozen at 11:47 p.m. Her thoughts kept circling around the same questions. Who sent that message last night? Why did the watch start ticking again? And most of all, what really happened to Daniel and Anna? She knew one thing for sure: she couldn't stop now. That afternoon, Emily drove back toward the old Reed house. The air smelled like rain again. The clouds hung low, and the road was almost empty. When she reached the property, she saw a car parked nearby, an old blue sedan. Someone else was here. Emily stepped inside the house quietly. The air was still thick with dust. She walked to the hallway where she had seen Anna's photo yesterday. This time, something was different. The photo frame was gone. A voice came from behind her. You shouldn't be here. Emily turned fast. It was Officer Tom Miller. Tom, she said in surprise. You followed me. He sighed. I knew you'd come back. You're digging into something that doesn't want to be found. I just want the truth, Emily replied. Daniel and Anna deserve that. Tom looked tired. I spent half my life looking for that truth. It destroyed me. Don't make the same mistake. Emily's eyes softened. Then help me find it? Please. Tom hesitated, then nodded slowly. All right. But you didn't hear this from me. The Reeds were one of the richest families in town. Anna's father, George Reed, hated Daniel. He thought Daniel wasn't good enough for his daughter. The night Daniel vanished, Anna was supposed to run away with him. Emily frowned. You think her father stopped them? Tom didn't answer. He looked around the room. She loved to write letters. Maybe they're still here. That one sentence was enough. Emily began searching. Drawers, shelves, under loose floorboards, she checked everywhere. Then, behind a cracked mirror in Anna's bedroom, Emily noticed something odd, a small wooden box covered in dust. She pulled it out and opened it. Inside were letters, tied together with a red ribbon. Her hands shook as she untied them. The first letter began simply. My dearest Daniel. I dream of our little house near the lake, with wildflowers outside the window. You promise me the world, and I believe you. Someday, we'll leave this town and its cold rules behind. Emily felt her heart ache. The next letters spoke of love, of stolen meetings, of plans to run away. But the last letter was different, shorter, written in a hurry. Daniel, meet me by the lake tonight at 11:30. I don't care what my father says. I'll come. I swear it. The letter ended mid-sentence. No goodbye. No signature. Tom looked over her shoulder. That's the night he disappeared, he said quietly. Emily nodded. And maybe, the night she died too. Just then, they heard a noise, a soft thump from upstairs. They froze. Tom whispered, Stay here. He drew a small flashlight and started up the stairs. Emily waited in the hallway, heart pounding. The sound came again, slow footsteps above them. Then silence. Tom, she called. No reply. She climbed the stairs slowly. The floorboards creaked. At the top, she saw a dim light coming from a half-open door. Inside, an old woman sat on a rocking chair by the window. Her white hair glowed in the soft light. She turned her head slowly toward Emily. Who are you? The woman asked gently. Emily froze. I'm Emily Parker. I'm a journalist. Are you? The woman smiled sadly. Anna. Anna Reed. Emily gasped. You're alive. Anna nodded faintly. Alive, yes. But not the same. Her voice trembled. Why have you come? Emily stepped closer and showed her the silver watch. Because of him. Because of Daniel. Anna's eyes filled with tears. Her hand reached out, trembling, touching the watch like it was a living thing. I gave him this, she whispered. The night he disappeared. It was my father's. Daniel wanted to fix it for me before we left. What happened that night, Anna? Emily asked softly. Anna looked out the window toward the lake, her voice breaking. He never came. I waited by the water until midnight. Then I heard a scream, and saw headlights vanish into the lake. The next morning, they told me Daniel ran away. But I knew, he would never leave me. Emily's throat tightened. Did you tell the police? I tried, Anna whispered. But my father made sure no one believed me. He said I was hysterical. Soon after, I was sent away to my aunt's house. Everyone thought I was dead. Maybe that was easier. Tears rolled down her wrinkled face. Emily gently placed the watch in her hands. Anna, it started ticking again. Last night. Anna looked at it closely. It does that sometimes. What do you mean? Anna's eyes grew distant. That watch, it only moves when someone is close to the truth. A loud knock suddenly hit the door downstairs. Both women jumped. Anna Reed, a man's voice shouted. "Open the door." Tom ran into the room. "It's the sheriff. They found out you're here." Anna stood, trembling. "They don't want this story told. Not after all these years." Emily grabbed her hand. "Then we tell it together." Tom looked out the window toward the lake. "We need to leave now." Emily nodded, grabbing the box of letters and the watch. As they ran out the back door, thunder rolled in the distance, and rain began to fall just like the night Daniel vanished. And somewhere between the sound of thunder and the rushing water, Emily could swear she heard a voice whisper. "Don't stop, Emily. The truth is waiting, beneath the water." Rain poured over Willow Creek as Emily, Anna, and Tom ran through the muddy backyard of the old Reed house. Lightning flashed across the dark sky, lighting up the trees and the lonely road that led to the lake. Emily's heart pounded. The box of letters was clutched tightly in her hands. Behind her, Anna struggled to keep up. Tom guided them toward his truck parked under the trees. "We can't stay here," Tom said. "Someone doesn't want the truth coming out. We'll go to the lake." That's where it all began. The rain fell harder, soaking their clothes, but none of them cared. The lake waited silent and dark, holding secrets for 30 long years. When they reached Willow Lake, the storm had calmed a little. Mist hovered above the water, and the reflection of the moon broke into ripples. Anna stood near the edge, staring at the lake as if seeing a ghost. "This is where I saw his car," she whispered. "It went into the water, right there." Tom grabbed a flashlight and shined it across the surface. "If it's still down there, we can find it. The current here is weak. Cars don't move far." Emily's hands were shaking as she held the watch. It was ticking again, slow, steady, alive. "It's moving," she said softly. "It only does that when we're close." Tom looked at her, uneasy. "I don't know if I believe that, but it gives me chills." He opened the back of his truck and pulled out a small underwater camera, a leftover from his days as a police diver. He set it up near the dock and dropped the lens into the water. The screen flickered in the rain. For a long time, there was only darkness, mud, fish, and rocks. Then suddenly, something metallic appeared. A faint outline of a car buried beneath the lake bed. Tom's eyes widened. "There it is. It's still here." Anna covered her mouth, tears mixing with the rain. "Daniel." They called a local tow company to help. The owner, an old man named Bill, hesitated but agreed after Tom flashed his old badge. Within an hour, heavy machinery roared to life. As the crane pulled the car from the lake, the sound of chains and gears echoed through the mist. Slowly, the car rose, covered in mud and weeds, its windows broken, its paint eaten away by time. Anna cried quietly. Emily stood beside her, holding her shoulder. When the car finally settled on dry ground, Tom opened the driver's side door carefully. Inside was a skeleton, still wearing a rusted watch on its wrist. In its hand was a small envelope, sealed but water-stained. Emily couldn't breathe. "Daniel," she whispered. Anna fell to her knees. "He waited for me, all this time." Tom gently removed the envelope. The ink had faded, but the handwriting was still visible, to Anna. He handed it to her. Anna's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a letter, old, fragile, but readable under the flashlight. "My dearest Anna. If you are reading this, it means I never made it to you. I want you to know I never ran away. I loved you more than life itself. Your father came to me tonight. He told me I'd ruin your future, but I didn't listen. I was on my way to meet you when the headlights blinded me, and then there was only water. If love is real, time can never kill it. Forever yours. Daniel." Anna clutched the letter to her chest and wept. Emily's eyes filled with tears too. She whispered, "He never left you, Anna. He tried to come. Tom turned away, his face pale. I I should have looked harder, he said quietly. We searched this lake, but your father, he ordered the case closed. Anna looked up sharply. My father? Tom nodded. George Reed was powerful. He paid off the police. Paid me to stop searching. I was young and scared. I took the money, and lived with that guilt every day. Anna's face went white. You knew? Tom's voice cracked. I didn't know he was in there. I swear. But I knew something was wrong. I buried the report. I let time erase the truth. Emily watched him closely. Tom, your nose, it's bleeding. He wiped it away, but his hand shook violently. His skin turned pale. I don't feel right. Then, as if struck by lightning, Tom collapsed onto the muddy ground. Tom! Emily screamed, kneeling beside him. Anna grabbed his hand. The watch in Emily's pocket stopped ticking instantly. The second hand froze at 11:47 p.m. Tom gasped weakly. That watch, he coughed. It knows when a soul leaves. And with that, his body went still. The rain stopped. The air grew heavy and silent. Anna and Emily sat beside the old car, unable to speak. The letter rested in Anna's lap, wet but whole. Emily looked at the watch frozen again. She whispered, he was right. It moves when someone's truth is found, and stops when their story ends. Anna nodded slowly. Then Daniel can rest now. Emily placed the watch gently on the car's hood. For a moment, lightning flashed across the sky, and in that brief light, she thought she saw a young man standing beside Anna, smiling softly before fading into the mist. Later that night, the authorities arrived. The car was taken for investigation, and Tom's death was ruled natural. But Emily knew it wasn't coincidence. It was the end of one story, and the beginning of another. Before leaving, she picked up the watch one last time. It was cold and quiet. As she turned it over, she noticed something new, a faint line engraved below the old message. It read, "Time kept us apart. Love brought us home." Emily held it close to her heart and whispered, "Rest in peace, Daniel." She didn't see it, but as she walked away, the watch's second hand moved forward one single tick. The next morning, the rain had stopped, and the sun finally returned to Willow Creek. Golden light fell over the lake where the car had been pulled out the night before. For the first time in 30 years, the water looked calm, as if the lake itself was finally at peace. Emily Parker stood by the shore, holding the old silver watch in her hand. Its glass still showed the same broken crack, its hands frozen at 11:47 p.m. But now, she knew what that time meant. It was not just the moment Daniel Hayes died. It was the moment love stopped and waited. Beside her, Anna Reed stood quietly, her eyes red from tears, the box of Daniel's letters clutched to her chest. "They'll take his remains back to Chicago," Anna said softly. "He'll finally have a grave, not just water and darkness." Emily nodded. "He deserves that. And the world deserves to know his story." Anna looked at her. "Will you write about it?" Emily hesitated. "I don't know if I should. Some stories belong to the people who lived them, not to the world that forgot them." Anna gave a faint smile. "That's kind of you. But maybe, telling the truth is another way of setting him free." A week later, Emily returned to Chicago. The city lights felt brighter, louder, and faster, but she didn't feel the same. Something inside her had changed. She placed the broken watch on her desk, right beside her computer. Her article draft was open, "A Broken Watch and the Love That Time Forgot." But she didn't type another word. She just stared at the title, then at the watch. For days, she couldn't decide. Should she publish Daniel and Anna's story for the world to see, or should she let it rest, like the quiet water of Willow Lake? That night, As the clock on her wall struck 11:47 p.m., she heard a soft sound of faint tick. Her heart jumped. The silver watch, motionless for days, had started ticking again. Slow, rhythmic, gentle. Tick, tick, tick. Emily leaned closer. "Why now?" she whispered. Then she noticed something new. The glass surface glowed faintly in the lamplight, and the engraving on the back, "To Anna, forever yours D," now had another line beneath it, one she had never seen before. It said, "Thank you, Emily." Her breath caught in her throat. She blinked and looked again. The line was still there. Her apartment suddenly felt warmer. The air seemed to shimmer slightly, as if someone unseen had just walked past. And in that silence, she heard a whisper, faint, soft, and kind. "You helped time move again." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She smiled through them. "You're welcome, Daniel." The next morning, she drove to a small park on the edge of the city. It was peaceful, birds singing, sunlight streaming through the trees. She opened her notebook and began to write, not for her readers this time, but for herself and for the two souls who had waited 3 decades to be reunited. Some love stories never end. Sometimes, they just stop waiting for someone brave enough to start the clock again. When she finished writing, she closed the notebook and took the watch out one last time. She walked to a small pond in the park. The water shimmered, reflecting the morning light. Emily smiled softly. "Time kept you apart," she whispered. "But love brought you home." She knelt down, kissed the watch, and gently placed it into the water. The watch sank slowly, catching the sunlight as it disappeared beneath the ripples. For a moment, it looked almost alive, its second hand ticking softly, then fading into the deep. That night, Emily dreamed of the lake again. But this time, it wasn't dark or cold. The sky was bright, and the water was calm. On the shore, she saw Daniel and Anna standing hand in hand. They looked young again, just as they had been 30 years ago. Daniel smiled at her. "You helped us find our time." Anna added softly, "Thank you for believing in us." Emily smiled back. "You never really left," she said. Then the dream faded into sunlight. Weeks later, Emily's editor at the newspaper asked, "So, did you finish that mystery story?" Emily smiled. "No. It wasn't mine to tell." The editor looked confused. "Then what will you write next?" She thought for a moment and said, "Something about love, and how sometimes, it changes the universe." That evening, as she packed up her notes, she glanced at her desk where the watch had once rested. The space was empty, but the faint sound of a ticking clock filled the room. She checked her wall clock. It wasn't moving. Her phone clock wasn't ticking either. The sound came from nowhere and everywhere. Tick, tick, tick. Emily smiled gently. She knew what it meant. Somewhere, time was moving again and two souls were finally together. The camera pans out. Emily sitting by her window, sunlight on her face, peace in her eyes. Outside, the city hums with life. And faintly, across the wind, a whisper echoes. "Forever yours." Fade out. The end.